The first 4 races of the 2025 Formula One season have shown that Ferrari started off much worse than expected. The winter declarations, the nice story of Lewis Hamilton's arrival, everything has been clearly overshadowed by the very poor performance of the SF-25 between Melbourne and Bahrain. Only in Sakhir did we see a real glimpse of competitiveness during the second stint on medium tires, followed by the usual difficulties. The two drivers have had diametrically opposite developments from the debut at the Albert Park circuit in Australia to the checkered flag in Sakhir last weekend. Both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton started poorly from a particularly unintelligible base and tried to find a way out through rather invasive adjustments, which, on a car as sensitive as the SF-25 seems to be, rarely bring short-term solutions. Yet last year the car gave the answers they were looking for. The SF-24 started well and was developed excellently, with the exception of those awful months following the disastrous aerodynamic upgrades introduced at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona, pushed by Italian aerodynamicist and former Ferrari technical director Enrico Cardale, who, after jeopardizing Ferrari's championship hopes, was conveniently dismissed and sent to Aston Martin. Unfortunately for Ferrari fans, none of this happened, in favor of a McLaren that, unlike the Italian team, managed to maintain a very high level even during the winter, producing an MCL39 single-seater capable of beating all competitors in this start of the 2025 Formula One season. The papaya-colored car is extremely strong, a sign of steady growth that began in mid-2023 with the update introduced in Austria. At Ferrari, on the other hand, they decided to overturn the platform, bringing a completely different car compared to last year's. Was it a car with a performance ceiling? Probably, but taking such a big risk in the final season of a regulatory may be seen as reckless by many, and with a new driver on the team, the risk was piling on too much at once, with the danger of getting burned. Ferrari was not ready for the 2025 Formula One championship, and Lewis Hamilton continues to have major difficulties adapting to the new car. That's completely normal, because when you have a certain working routine and 7 world titles behind you, nothing can be reset with a click. The Brit looked very discouraged on Saturday after the qualifying session for the Bahrain Grand Prix, only to recover with a fairly decent second half of the race. On the other hand, the true leader of these first 4 races has been Charles Leclerc, who was almost completely overlooked throughout the winter. The Monegasque driver immediately set the tone from the first 2 weekends of this championship. He chose to take a completely different direction from the one originally taken at the start of the season, and the results are evident, because the 4th-place finishes in Suzuka and Bahrain are certainly not due to chance or the floor update in Sakhir. And what if the Maranello team, at the start of the year, perhaps with the blessing of Loic Serra and Jerome D'Ambrosio, chose a setup direction more aligned with Lewis Hamilton's preferences? That could explain the ongoing struggles of the 7-time Formula One world champion, possibly dazzled by the good performance in the China sprint race, but off the pace in the rest of the weekends held so far. We're not talking about upgrades, as it is still too early and insignificant, but about the setup directions being taken. You know, the champion arrives, maybe he could contribute something more in that sense. That would explain the comments and consequently the results achieved by Charles Leclerc in the last 2 races, because the Monegasque knows the car and the team around him very well. And if it really went down as we think, the Ferrari technicians and engineers would have committed a colossal own goal. It's clear that Lewis Hamilton still does not understand much about the SF-25, but that's completely normal, which is why it should be the Monegasque who takes the reins as the leader at this stage of the championship, at least for now, in order to help the British driver adapt and develop a car that's easier to understand. Ferrari's problems are real and will continue for some time, but perhaps they should start listening more to Charles Leclerc. The Monegasque's comments after the first 2 races suggest that work wasn't done properly at the start of the season. It's unclear in which area, but that could be a hypothesis. Charles Leclerc has changed direction and is starting to feel more in tune with the car, while Lewis Hamilton keeps crashing into a wall he can't break through. Everything might come together later, waiting for an aerodynamic update package that can turn this Ferrari around and give some real meaning to a 2025 Formula One season that otherwise would not have any. The first phase of Lewis Hamilton's new chapter at Ferrari has therefore not lived up to expectations, and the British driver is the first to admit it. The adaptation process to the car and, more generally, to the working methods of the historic Maranello-based team is taking longer than expected. Making everything more complicated are the issues related to the competitiveness of the SF-25, a technical project that has shown potential only under specific operating conditions. In this context, it is difficult to understand where the car's problems end and the driver's difficulties begin. Charles Leclerc has repeatedly said he has found a setup that gives him more confidence, although this greater confidence is currently not enough to fight against the papaya-colored cars. The situation is quite different for the 7-time Formula One world champion. The brilliant start to the sprint weekend in Shanghai highlighted two clear factors. When the Ferrari showed top-level competitiveness, somewhat like it used to at Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton dominated the sprint race, showing his mastery in tire management. Those who analyze drivers' performances beyond the raw results have certainly noticed that, in recent years, the British driver tends to ignite when the car gives him a chance to fight for victory. One could argue that many drivers can win with a winning car, but in Lewis Hamilton's case, other factors must be considered. Despite his motivation never having faded, even during the darkest moments of the past 3 years, it is undeniable that for a driver who has broken all the records in the top category of motorsport, there is no other goal but to keep winning. When the car reaches top-level performance, Lewis Hamilton still knows how to make the difference. There are drivers who find their comfort zone when the going gets tough, and among them is certainly the 7-time F1 world champion. Take, for example, fellow countryman Lando Norris. For about a year, he has had the most consistently competitive car. But on various occasions, due to errors and an inability to extract the maximum from the machinery, he has shown that he struggles at high altitude regardless of the opponent. By contrast, when the car isn't at the top level, the Ferrari Englishman becomes almost a passenger in his car. This inconsistent behavior can even be seen within a single race. Last weekend at the Bahrain International Circuit, for example, there were phases where the Brit kept pace with Charles Leclerc, while in others, he could do nothing but wrestle with his SF-25 car. It is undeniable that a quick return to competitiveness for both the Maranello team and Lewis Hamilton would certainly be welcomed not only by fans, but also by the commercial rights holders of Formula One. The championship is still very long, with 20 rounds yet to be raced, and at least on paper, any outcome is still possible, as McLaren itself demonstrated not more than 1 year ago. The Jeddah weekend should now provide definitive answers regarding the progress made through the technical updates Ferrari introduced in Bahrain. The Sakhir circuit offered positive feedback on the most crucial aspect, the widening of the SF-25's operating window. The third place secured by Charles Leclerc in a qualifying session without unusual variables was a positive sign, and the race pace was confirmed to be the best seen since the beginning of the season. The hope is to maintain strong downforce levels without having to lower the car to the limit that risks wearing down the plank. In this regard, the Saudi weekend will offer important answers. Vasseur himself noted that the first triple header of the season would conclude in Saudi Arabia on the Jeddah Corniche circuit, which features characteristics very different in both layout and track surface compared to Bahrain, where they had raced less than a week earlier. The Frenchman explained that in Sakhir, the team had made small steps forward in terms of competitiveness, both thanks to improved car performance and a solid team effort in qualifying and the race. At the end of last weekend, the Ferrari's technicians worked extensively in Maranello to analyze the data collected from the new components installed on the two SF-25s, a process that will already prove useful in terms of setup for the upcoming weekend. Vasseur confirmed that in those few days in Maranello, the team had continued to work intensely on data analysis and intended to approach the Jeddah race with the same objective. He stated that they aimed to remain focused on themselves, as it was the best way to extract the maximum from the available package and to progress consistently in order to close the gap that still separates them from the teams ahead in the standings.